afternoon, everyone. Live from Silicon Valley, California, this is Spiritual Fitness with your host, Vaishishika Prabhu, a veteran Bhakti yogi, author, and former monk, and myself, JM. Spiritual Fitness is a program dedicated to exploring the timeless texts and practices of Bhakti yoga that lead to spiritual fitness. We have more than 150 people on Facebook watching us live and close to 20 people on Zoom. I have Avantika helping me out and managing social media posts today. So good afternoon, Vaishika Prabhu. Welcome.
All right. Thank you, JM. Good to see you, and I like your shirt. Excellent. And welcome to everybody. So happy to be back with you today. I hope you're all well and feeling happiness in your mind. And if you're not, you came to the right place, because we're going to talk today about where suffering comes from. And according to the Yoga Sutras, it all comes from the mind. First, I offer my respects to my teacher, Srila Prabhupada, and to all of you, because you are all elevated spiritual beings, and I'm very happy to be with you. So there's an analogy given in many of the ancient yoga scriptures that talk about meditation. And one of them is about a pot of water. If you put it out and there's a reflection of the moon within the water, you'll notice that when the pot moves and if somebody were to jar the pot slightly, then there would be ripples in the water. And then you'd notice that the moon was moving also. Well, the moon's not actually moving technically. I mean, one could argue that semantically, but the fact is, it appears to be moving in the pot of water. And in a similar way, as we've talked about in previous sessions, the whole world, which is made up of a list of substances, earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and ego, these are gross and subtle substances, are actually a reflection of reality. Reality is beautiful. And when it's reflected in this world, we identify with it, and the original reality, which is stable, is moving in this world due to the movement of what's called the three modalities, or energetic transformations of nature. Now, our bodies are also made up of these three modalities, the bodies and minds. None of them are us. We're non-temporal, non-chemical, non-neural, and we're a particle of antimatter that is situated within this body as a passenger, as a witness, the one who's observing what's coming through the various senses in the body. And the mind is like a reflecting pool. So on that reflecting pool, we see an image of the world. We never actually see the world. We actually see an image of it. All the imagery that comes through the senses is reflected on the mind, and actually it leaves an impression, just as if you take a picture with photographic film, as in the old days we used to have, and it still applies to digital. You snap the picture, and then there's an image left. You may store it in your hard drive, or if it was on film, you still have the image on the film. So the mind records it. And it has unlimited storage, so much so that the imagery has been stored there since a time immemorial. That includes not just this life, but previous lives. I'll bet you couldn't remember what you were doing about around 1 o'clock last Friday, or maybe what you were doing last Wednesday at this time. Can you remember? Can you remember what you were doing last Friday, the last year on this Friday? Or maybe 5 years ago? JM is saying no, can't remember. What to speak of 20, 30 years ago, what to speak of in previous lifetimes. However, the imagery is all there. These are called samskaras, and we'll talk about them later. They impel us to action. We identify with the samskaras. We see the world through these samskaras. In other words, going back to our original analogy, The way that we see the world is as if we're seeing the moon in a pot. And when the pot is moving, or the water in the pot is moving, that image of the moon is moving also. So let's start off. That's just a preamble of what we're going to get into today, to give us a little bit of wisdom from the ancient literatures, to be able to observe what is the nature of the mind and what is causing suffering. By the way, the word, when I looked it up and kept following down the rabbit hole of the etymological dictionary, where it comes from, it originally comes from a Sanskrit word, which means to carry. Interesting, because many of you have heard the term pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. So there's a way in which this suffering has to do with what we pick up and carry with us. And that's what we carry in our mind, the experience that we've had of the world. And then I continue to identify with it within my mind. And my perception of what's going on in my life situation is the cause of my suffering. Okay, so that's all easy to say. It's an abstract, but realizing it, that takes a little bit of effort, and we're going to talk about that today also, what the discipline of yoga means. I'm going to borrow a little bit from the Yoga Sutras, because as I advertised in the flyer, I'd be talking about yoga psychology. Patanjali, who lived thousands of years ago and wrote the Yoga Sutras, which are today parsed and followed in part in various places, writes extensively, or at least he writes in code, but there's been commentary by those who followed him, which is extensive, about what the psychology, what are the movements of the mind, what are the various stages of consciousness that we go through. And we'll look at them together and see how parallel they are with our own experiences. Does that sound okay, everybody? You can always give one of these thumbs up. It really enlivens me when I see those. So if you want to make me happy, you just put up a thumbs up and I'll keep going. Okay, so let's start with a little introspection. I'm looking outwardly. I have the gates in my body pointed outwards, and they're going from one object to the next in this world. And I develop attachments to some of them, and I say some of them are mine, and some of them belong to others, and they create impressions in my mind and so forth. But let's take a moment, because we're human and we have the power to do so, to look inside and notice what's going on inwardly. And so if you'll just sit up a tiny bit straighter, not militantly straighter, but just a tiny bit straighter than you were a second ago, you'll notice your mind comes to focus. And close your eyes, which are the normal gateway to the outside world. And then bring your attention to your breath. There are thousands of channels of prana that run throughout the body, through which various bodily functions work. And you're feeding them, although you may not notice it throughout the day, with your breath. And if you'll just relax into it, but let your mind be alertly aware of your breath and your breathing. And let go of any responsibilities. Let them slide away. And appreciate your breath. It's a gift of life. And let the exhale go all the way out without straining. And all the way in, nourishing but without straining all the cells in your body. And breathe and relax. and just be. You're not a human doing, you're a human being. You can just be, it's okay. And now let's bring our awareness to our main asset in life, and that is our attention. Where attention goes, energy flows. And we have the choice of placing our attention wherever we wish. So let's place our attention on the heart chakra, the area of the chart wherein lies the seat of consciousness. That's you. The conscious, non-material, non-chemical, non-temporal, organizing particle. You live within the region of the heart and expand your consciousness. You expand your consciousness throughout this body, which is like a biomechanical robot with various pumps and levers, various chemicals which are not you. Bring your conscious awareness to the seat of emotion, the heart. And in the Srimad Bhagavatam, which teaches the art and science of Bhakti Yoga, the yoga of love and gratitude, it is mentioned there that within the region of your heart, the heart chakra, the vibration of the mantra Om continually resonates. So now, as a meditation, using our vocal cords, keeping our attention on the heart chakra, we'll resonate with that sound vibration, unstruck sound, but we'll be using struck sound with our vocal cords from the outside. And together, let's, from behind closed mics, say the mantra Om. I'll do it 3 times. You can follow along with me. And afterwards, I'll find out if I was in a key that was helpful to you. Om. Keep your focus on your heart center and feel whatever resonance was there from the vibration of the mantra Om. Notice any thought energy and objectify it, thinking, I am the witness. I am watching my thoughts, and therefore my thoughts are not me. Now you can notice your physical body, starting with your hands. Just feel your hands. Bring your awareness to your fingers and notice that you're the one observing your hands. You are not your hands. You are the observer of your hands. Bring your awareness to your feet and notice how easily you can transfer your attention from one place to the next. Your main asset in life is your attention and your freedom to choose where to place it. And where attention goes, energy flows. And thus goes our life, according to where we place our attention. And now bring your attention back to your breath. And feel gratitude that you're being sustained, nourished by Vishwambar, a higher power in the universe which sustains all life. You can rub your hands together to come back to some external sensation. Open your eyes and come back into the Zoom room. And it's amazing as conscious beings how we can journey wherever we wish. When we're sleeping at night, we journey in various places in our subtle bodies, unaware of our gross body lying there. And throughout the day, we may notice or not notice, but we're moving through various states of consciousness. Let's look at those. JM, if you'll put up the slides, I'm going to describe, first of all, the three energetic transformations of nature called gunas. Guna in Sanskrit, among other things, means ropes. So if you notice, a rope has various strands, 3 times 3 times 3 times 3, and then you get a thick rope or cord, and it gets thicker and thicker. It becomes very strong. So here we have the three modalities, and they're continually mixing and competing with one another. Sattva is the modality of light, peacefulness, and of being balanced, the balanced mode of nature. Rajas is smoky, as fire serves, and that's sattva, whereas smoke disturbs. Active, chaotic, movement. And tamas is the modality, the transformation into darkness, inactivity, depression, gloominess. These modalities have various descriptions. I've just given a summary of them here. Everything in the world is affected by these modalities, according to the Yoga Sutras and the Bhagavad Gita, the ancient yogic teachings, including our bodies. Our bodies are part of nature. Not only that, our minds. And above the mind is said to be the buddhi, or the intellect. It's even more subtle than the mind, but it too, although extremely subtle, is made up of these three gunas and therefore subject to transformations. So you may notice, for instance, let's just say if you're doing yoga and you're actively stretching, you're moving into a pose, and then this is rajas, you're moving, and then you find tension in that pose. This tension is rajas energy, but then you breathe into it, and gradually you're able to sustain the pose, and it becomes natural. You relax into it, you become balanced, and you've transformed rajas into sattva. And afterwards, maybe a session of yoga, you'll notice that you feel peaceful because you've taken a little trouble to transform from rajas into sattva. And similarly, we can also transform rajas into tamas. If you stay up all night, and then you forgot you have to wake up early. Now you're groggy. You barely think. You still have to work on the project. People are asking you questions. You can't find your papers. Why didn't I listen to my friend who told me to go to bed early? And tamas. And then you drink your cup of coffee, and coffee is a rajasic substance. It puts rajas right into your veins, and now you snap back into active mode, and rajas becomes prominent in your body, in your mind, and you're up and moving. And so in these ways, the sattva, rajas, and tamas energies are always moving in our lives, and through the process of yoga, we can transform, or we can transfer one modality and move up into a higher modality. So the more we're in sattva, the more we have clear vision and we feel peacefulness. Without that, if I'm in rajas, doesn't matter what I do or what I have or where I go, I'll still feel unhappy. You could put it back on spotlight just for a second. Let's discuss this. Have you ever been in a situation where that was idyllic? You went to the most beautiful place you thought on the planet, but you still felt an anxiety because your mind was disturbed? Or do you think it's possible to be in a place that's a little bit chaotic, but because your mind is peaceful, you feel happy? JM, what do you think?
I just remember, I don't know, maybe 18, 20 years ago, I went to Kashmir. So it was one of the most beautiful places, but there were lots of violent activities going on at that time. So yeah, I was in the most beautiful place, but I was still sometimes tense looking at the amount of security, etc. So yeah, even though you're in most wonderful place, you might still be anxious.
Yeah, and that's an example of how the modalities mix. For instance, you can be in an idyllic place, and then there's something going on there that's very rajasic. You're in a sattvic area like a forest, and then suddenly there's, a hunter appears shooting or something like that. And the modes change, the modalities change. And it can be also, if you go to some peaceful place, but your mind is disturbed, it's still moving in rajas or in tamas. For instance, sometimes I notice people go to places like Hawaii, and then they go there and they consume copious amounts of alcohol, and end up stumbling, falling down, waking up on the beach and so forth. So you can be in a very beautiful sattvic environment, but then place yourself by your own choices into tamas or rajas. Okay, let's look at the next slide. So this is a list of I didn't include the Sanskrit there for simplicity, but this is a list of the 5 states of mind as given by Patanjali in the Yoga Sutras. And the first one is called dull. Second is wandering. Third is distracted. The fourth is one-pointed. And the fifth is restrained. So according to Patanjali, only the last 2 are yoga, or the mind which is clear. That is one-pointed and restrained. Now, notice how the modalities, which we just listed, relate to these various states of mind. So when the mind is dull, it's being affected by tamas, which is the modality of darkness, inertia, confusion. Wandering is rajas, definitely rajas. Constantly moving here or there, looking here or there. And then next is distracted. So distracted is a little higher, and that's why it has a mixture of rajas and sattva. Or because it has a mixture of rajas and sattva, it's a higher modality because it has a little sattva in it. So let's say you're focusing, but then you get distracted. Focusing, then you're distracted. That means you're in sattva, then rajas, sattva, then rajas. Then when we come, the mind which is purely in sattva, it's not being affected at the moment by rajas and tamas at all. Just for a while, then it's one-pointed. Now in yoga, there are various stages, especially now I'm referring to Ashtanga yoga because that's what Patanjali taught. And there are different stages or limbs in the practice of Ashtanga. And it all has to do with this, with the mind, really, because the beginning of the Yoga Sutras Patanjali declares that yoga is the stilling of the mind. It's meant to bring that pot of water to a very still state so you can see the moon clearly. You can see yourself clearly. You can see the world the way it is and not in a distorted way. So one-pointed at the stage of meditation where you can fix your mind on one point for 12 seconds. 12 seconds. This is a very high achievement called dharana. And above that, when you can do 12 times 12, then the mind is considered to be restrained and in a very high state of consciousness. So dull, wandering, distracted, one-pointed, and restrained are the various states of mind which are affected by the modalities of nature. Okay. Let's just, for a second, just in case, see if anybody wants to write anything in the chat box. That's the least, intimidating way to participate. You can write any reflections you have, or if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat. Or if you want to pop in, you're perfectly welcome to join the conversation. In fact, we invite you to. Any observations that you have so far of anything that you've heard that you'd like to report back on. It could be a fragment or a word or an idea that you heard so far that you want to present. Or a question to illuminate the conversation or expand it. And while you're thinking about it, I'm going to have a sattvic glass of water. Everyone okay then? Can I get one of these? Okay. JM, tell us what we have here in the chat box, please.
Yeah, so we have Jay Gumara asking, what is the ideal amount of time to spend in each of the states and modalities?
Well, actually, we need various these modalities to function in this world, in this body, because if you're going to sleep, you definitely need tamas, as tamas is the mode of sleep. So you need a little bit there, and in rajas, and if you're going to get up and go to work, you're going to need a little rajas. And sattva is the ideal mode. Sattvam yad brahmadarshanam, says the Bhagavad Gita, the Srimad Bhagavatam, and that is, from sattva you can see the world and you can see yourself clearly. From sattva you can see that, oh, actually I'm not my body, and other people aren't their bodies either. In other words, you can see others equally. The idea of equality is a metaphysical idea, because on a material plane, everything's got its varieties. Everything's different. One body's not the same as another. So we really can't claim that everything's equal on the material level. On the spiritual level, it's equal. And there's a sense of seeing everything the way it is on its spiritual level. That is, that a being, a human, or an animal, or a plant is actually a non-material particle animating a material body. So the ideal time is in balance, and mostly in sattva, if you like to be progressive in life. What else, JM?
You have Deepak Verma, who's asking, what's the difference between one-pointed and restrained states, and how much does it depend on food?
Oh, well, it depends a lot on food, because we are what we eat, not just in body, but also mind and consciousness. And that's one of the ways in which anyone can amend their life, although it's not easy, because the tongue is the most difficult of all the senses to control. However, if you can get control of the tongue, and I do a seminar called Yoga of the Tongue, because one of the ancient Puranas or writings about yoga says, Ata Shri Krishna Namadi Nabhaved Grayam Indriye Seva Mukhi Jivado Swayameva Spratyada. And that is that yoga begins with the tongue. And if you can learn to control the tongue, then you can then control all the other senses. And it goes on to say, if your tongue isn't controlled, even if it looks like your other senses are, then they're not. It's a gateway sense. It leads to all the others. So it's important which food that we eat. Those foods in sattva are fresh, they're clean, they're nonviolent, and so forth. And one-pointed and restrained consciousness, they're higher levels of sattva and clarity. So in one-pointed consciousness, one's actually using the mind and the buddhi or the intellect as a tool to notice oneself. Whereas in restrained consciousness, the self is aware of itself, independent of the mind and the intellect. These are very technical terms, but Patanjali goes through them in the yoga psychology of the Yoga Sutras.
We have Pankaj who said that he felt peach during meditation and mind was really calm.
Oh, good. Peach as in the fruit, right?
Yes.
Well, what could be better than that? I can't imagine any fruit that's more beautiful. I have a peach tree just outside my window here. And one more?
Yeah, Vijay says, how do you characterize meditation while we have thoughts? What if we are witness to these thoughts, sattva or rajas?
Well, it could be in sattva, but there are different levels as I just described, and I'll show you further about the ways that the consciousness is affected by the modes of material nature and when we're above the modes of material nature. So let's go back to the slides, and I think it'll help to answer some of these questions. So this is a picture of the brain, actually, but in the Yoga Sutra and all the other yoga literatures, the conscious or the mind and the intellect is described as chitta. There's an aggregate which includes the mind, the ego, and the intellect. And above that is the non-material particle, you, the living being, who animates the body and also animates the mind and the intellect. And the mind or the chitta is like a screen. And the vrttis are waves. Vritti means to turn. So there are churnings within the mind. You might notice that although the world is one thing, the mind interprets it in different ways. For instance, if someone gets a very high fever, like say 105, then he or she may experience delirium and be seeing that the carpet is moving or talking, or if somebody takes psychotropic, psychoactive drugs, psychedelic drugs, there's a way in which the person's sitting there apparently calmly, but that person is watching the world morph into different forms, shapes, and colors, and so forth. And that's because the chitta is affected. It's moving. And as I said before, we're observing the world as an impression left on the mind of the world. We're not actually observing it directly. It goes through the mind. So the vrittis are the movements that are constantly upon the mind, just like a lake which is moving because of the wind. And the sensory inputs that we're getting from the environment are constantly coming in, and they're touching the mind, and it's moving in different ways. And samskara means a lasting impression. So these impressions then affect us in different ways, because you may notice that you have various likes and dislikes. Some things you abhor, and some things you gravitate towards and say, oh, I like this. Certain kinds of flavors you like, some other certain situations you like, and others you don't. And in Patanjali, in his yoga psychology, describes how we have these predispositions because of the samskaras in our mind. For instance, in this life or a previous life, because we've experienced pain or pleasure, we are predisposed towards certain things. Like if we were hurt by a certain kind of incident or person, when we're around that same environment in this life, we have that samskar, that impression, and we're naturally either attracted or repulsed by it. So this is the waves and impressions within the chitta or the mind. And it's not necessarily just in the brain, although, this is a representation of that phenomena. Okay, next we have karma. So when one's present choices are being impelled by one's mind's accumulated past impressions, we have what's called karma. So in other words, the choices I'm making right now, I may think I'm free, but actually I'm being impelled because of the impressions I already have. And I'm being moved as if against my will in various directions. I'm not making a free choice. I'm making a choice which is based on my attractions and repulsions, based on the impressions, the samskars that I have in my mind. So karma pushes me in a certain direction. Destiny, some people call it. However, we are autonomous beings, and we can rise above karma. Karma is not permanent. It's something that comes to an end when we rise to a higher level of perception, otherwise known as self-realization. So let's see the next slide. Here we have what Patanjali describes in the psychology of yoga as the five kleshas, or the sufferings within the mind. So he identifies what causes the sufferings in the mind. And here they are in very broad categories. He goes into minute detail about these, and other commentators do also. But in general, avidya. So vidya means knowledge, and avidya means no knowledge. And we oftentimes see it translated from Sanskrit into ignorance. So what is the crux of this? This avidya means that I make a mistake and I think that I'm my body. I'm actually not a physical or mental body. I'm a non-neural, non-chemical, non-temporal particle of antimatter that's, I will say, spiritual, that's within the body. It's categorically different from matter, but I think I'm my body. I think I'm an American. I think I'm from California, where these are only very ephemeral identities that I'm adhering to as I'm passing through. And I say, oh, this is me. This is what I am. But that's not true. You're not actually your body. The second one, asmita, which means ego, which is a sense that you transform the things around you from things into my things. And I say, these are mine. I own these. We actually don't own anything. We come into the world naked and we leave it naked. And while we're here, we look around like kings and conquerors. They look around and say, this is my ocean, that's my land. And Mother Earth is laughing, saying, what are you talking about? You're only here for 5 minutes in geological time. You just got here a couple seconds ago and you're going to leave in a few minutes. But I claim my. There is, this is a mistake of the mind which causes suffering. The next two go together as two sides of a coin, raga and dvesha, which means attachment and aversion. So these again are caused by previous impressions. Because I had a pleasurable experience from something in the past, I have an attachment to it now. I'm impelled towards it. And I have, for the same opposite reason, an aversion to it called dvesha. And this is because of my previous impressions. And this is one of the ways in which I'm moved about through karma. And abhinibesha is a very interesting one. It means clinging to life. Now, not to bring up a sore subject, but everyone has to leave this body at any time. We don't even have a lease signed for how long we get to stay here. But there's a sense, Patanjali says, that I'm going to stay here forever and I'll do whatever I have to do, which also is important. Of course, we're not advocating anybody be reckless, and it doesn't matter, because the body is a vessel and it's a very important vessel. However, the idea of clinging to life, that I'll stay here in this particular body forever, is considered a klesha, and it's actually one of the greatest causes of suffering, because of trying to transform that which is temporary into something which is permanent. Whoa. I'm going to slow down for a second. Let's take a few reflections or questions. I need to hear some voices on here. So please give a reflection. You can come off mute, give a reflection or a question, and it'll help give me some human contact. Don't worry, I don't bite. I'm a vegetarian. Did I hear someone?
I have a question.
Oh, yes.
So I see that the biggest challenge what we face on a day-to-day basis or every moment is to really focus or keep our focus or sustain our focus, and the mind keep wandering. And is that also a reason why we suffer?
Yes, definitely. As I like to say, focus is nectar, distraction is torture. Just literally being pulled from one place to the next. Have you ever seen a very active dog who, has been in the house too long and gets out, and he's just pulled from one side of the street to the next, and the dog's companion is pulling him by the leash, and the dog is pulling against him, and the nose is taking him here, there, and everywhere. Our senses are like that. They're pulling us here, there, and everywhere. So this is rajas.
Mm.
This is the entrance of this modality of rajas into the chitta. So the chitta has to be purified, and I won't leave you without some practical steps. They're coming at the end, which I'll say in just a couple more minutes, about how to purify the chitta. What is the actual practical process of yoga through which to do this? Yeah, meditation and lifestyle, enlightened engagement with the world brings us to sattva and beyond. Let's see if there's anybody else. I really appreciate you checking in, because I needed to hear another human voice.
Hi, I have a question.
Oh, yes, please.
What do negative thoughts and worries indicate? I mean, what is our mind trying to tell us, or are we seeing through muddy waters and things like that? I just want to understand from your perspective.
Sure. Well, when you say negative, can you give me a little definition of what you mean by negative?
So maybe worry is some, negative is not the outcome that I want, or
yes.
So I would consider anything that is not the outcome I want as negative.
Yeah,
so
that's what important question, because that is one of the ways that we suffer, isn't it? And there's a way in which I have a conception of which way my life should go. Have you ever noticed that? You think it's going to look like this when I get there, or one thing I've noticed, my mind, if I hear like somebody on the radio, and then I actually see their picture, I go, that's not them. They don't look like their voice. It's totally different. My mind already made a picture. And similarly, my mind makes pictures of the way my life is supposed to look. Oftentimes people dream about my graduation. I'm going to go up on stage and everyone's going to be cheering for me, or whatever it may be. I have this idea of that. Then when it doesn't go that way, it's quite disconcerting. What it is basically is that these worries are a kind of vritti, or a churning of the mind. It's an energy that moves through the mind, and it's a product of the lower modes of nature. Generally, moroseness, worry, it's tinged by tamas, the lower energy of nature. And you can notice this for yourself as you become more introspective and aware that your mind is not you. Your life situation is not you either. It's something that you're moving through, and it's constantly changing, just like a river is constantly changing. So you'll be able to notice, oh, there's some worry energy moving in my consciousness right now. When you can develop that little bit, even a molecule of perspective, that I'm stepping back from the worry and I'm looking at it and I'm saying, oh, yeah, that's moving in a certain direction. And then you can develop some tolerance, because these things come and go. And it's one of the main themes of, for instance, the Bhagavad Gita, is that you have to become dhira, or tolerant, of the changes that take place within the mind, because they're like seasons. Your mind goes through seasons: winter, summer, spring, autumn, and so forth, constantly changing. And you still have to move through them. Did that help?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. And I'll give some practical tips. I keep saying
Sure.
that.
Yes.
Any second now I will. Let's just see if we have one more question live before I move to the last slide. Anyone else?
I have a question.
Yes.
So, hi, my name is Vikas, and thank you for these insights. So, I'm actually in a vicious state where my physical symptoms directs my mind, and then my mind directs those physical symptoms. So it's like a vicious cycle I'm into. How can I get out of it?
Yes, and that's an important point you brought up. There's a way in which, when the mind conjures something, the body reacts, and then the mind notices that the body reacted and then says, oh, it must be true, because the body's now perspiring, then so going on like that. And when I was in university, I took a class in psychology called psychosomatic optimization. And it was really about how the mind controls the body. And the various states of our mind can then put us through many transformations, and how that loops back and then confirms for us. So again, it has a lot to do with the modality that your mind is accustomed to, or that has that you've conditioned it to. And it also has to do with the level of introspection that you're able to get. It can be very, very helpful. And let's do that. Let's move to the next couple of slides, or is there one more, in which we can talk about what Patanjali mentions as a way to weaken these kleshas, these sufferings within the mind. Okay, so he calls it Kriya Yoga. Kriya really comes from the same root as karma, because it comes from a root called kra in Sanskrit, which means to be active. So this is one of the most important aspects of this presentation, and that is that little quotation under Bhakti or Karma Yoga, which says, enlightened engagement with the world. Yoga is not about renunciation. It's not about giving up the world, and it's not about embracing it in an inordinate way, or in a way in which you become more entangled. It's about enlightened engagement with the world. With people, there are enlightened relationships. There's an enlightened way to keep things. It's not about renouncing things. It's about using them for a higher purpose. This is what enlightened engagement means. Here are the three stages that Patanjali gives, or the three engagements through which you can weaken the kleshas, or the sufferings within the mind. So the first is called self-discipline, or tapa. And it's mentioned by the commentators that from gentle regulation of the senses, one's mind develops sattva. So that means gradual, it means appropriate. We're not meant to engage in militant renunciation or self-discipline in such a way that we become overwhelmed by it, or we become hard-hearted, but gentle and highly recommended regulations of the senses. I'll just give you one as an example, which is waking up earlier in the morning. When you wake up early and you do a little bit of mantra meditation, and there's a few other practices that you can do, which we recommend in our 21-day fitness, spiritual fitness challenge that you can sign up for if you ever like to. so that there's a way in which you're a little bit disciplined. You start off with controlling the mind by planning out your day on paper. This goes more to the higher levels of rajas and then into sattva, and then some inherently directly enlightening practices and self-disciplines. Being careful of your diet is also a self-discipline that you can do gently and gradually, and you will see by these regulations, gentle regulations, that you start to trend upwards towards sattva. Your mind becomes more luminous. You become more capable of dealing with all kinds of situations and with the energy of worry and so forth. The next is called swadhyaya. So swa means yourself, and adhyaya means to study. So to study yourself, this is very important. So one of the ways that you do that is by the study of trans-physical, trans-mental wisdom. There are concentrated wisdom literatures which talk about our identity beyond the physical, beyond the mental. And to cultivate this knowledge, as we're doing today, I'm just giving you a summary of this kind of trans-physical, trans-mental knowledge that Patanjali has been passed down over ages, that describe the psychology of yoga. When you're able to self-observe and see how the mind's working, you have a tendency to weaken the kleshas. Why? Because the kleshas are really caused by avidya, which means I'm misidentifying myself with my mind and my body. And the other practice in swadhyaya means japa, chanting of mantra. So mantra meditation is the kind of meditation that Patanjali recommends. And if we have a few minutes at the end, we'll do a little bit more. We started with Om in the beginning, which is a mantra. And when you do this study of these trans-physical, trans-mental wisdom literatures, and you practice a little bit of japa or a mantra meditation every day, you'll start to notice the weakening of the kleshas. And the third in the karma yoga package, or bhakti yoga, is dedication to the original conscious source. So we have a original conscious source, and this is called Ishvara Pranidhan. So he mentions that from this dedication or action-oriented devotion to our original conscious source, one gets grace, by which the fruits of yoga become readily available. So dedicating your work that you do, at least starting a little bit for service to your original divine source, rather than just doing it in a fruitive way and thinking, what's the result I'm going to get? Do it service for service. And through this dedicated service, it also weakens the kleshas. And lo and behold, when the mind becomes purified, whatever situation we're in, we can be happy. And the sufferings will weaken. They will, we will be able to rise above them through the process of karma yoga or bhakti yoga, which is in that little package there. So now let's see if there's any questions or reflections before we try out a little bit of mantra meditation.
We do have a couple of questions on the chat.
Okay.
One is from Mariam Ramani. Is it possible we remember too much from the past life and start to hurt because there were phenomenal memories? Can we come back to state of forgetting those or let go of those past memories?
Yeah, actually, it is. There are many documented cases of people, of children actually. I mentioned this before, University of Virginia. There's a department there that studies this phenomena in children that in a liminal stage in their development, they actually remember very accurately where they were in their last life. Or some yogis, actually, according to Patanjali, when the mind becomes completely sattvic, are able to see their past lives very clearly. Our predisposition, as I mentioned before, being repulsed by certain things and being attracted to certain things spontaneously in this life. Some people have phobias. These come from samskaras in our last life and so forth. Yes, these are naturally suppressed. Otherwise, we would be extremely neurotic, if not psychotic. I mean, you know, our identity now is really based on a very compartmentalized period of time where I'm in this body right now. And if I become more and more aware of my past lives, unless I'm in the right situation, I can become quite disturbed by it. But it's quite natural for us to forget about those, but we can be aware of them through our predispositions. Okay, and what's the last question?
This the last one Avantika posted. It's from Facebook. Where Kamla has asked, is actually practicing asana, whether it is hatha or ashtanga yoga, actually extremely beneficial with getting all these gunas under control, like sattva, or is it bhakti yoga? Which one is useful?
Yes, thank you for asking. Although asanas are extremely popular nowadays because they ultimately make you look really good and feel good too, Patanjali in his Yoga Sutras doesn't give very much emphasis to them at all. In fact, he doesn't give any. He gives a little, but not much. The point he makes is that in order to introspect, to meditate, you have to be able to sit still for a little while. And if you're hurting while you're sitting, you can't do that. And therefore, asanas really in the yoga system, at least in Ashtanga, are meant so that we can be pain-free when we sit and look inwardly. And that gives us, buys us a little time so we can actually not be then aroused by the body, awoken by the body again, like get up, you got to move. So that's how asanas, according to Patanjali, are utilitarian. They're actually meant for a higher purpose. They're not ends unto themselves. Okay. Now, what is a direct process of bhakti yoga is the vibration. We've done many classes on that together. And the chanting has a way that it connects us to a higher energy. And in that case, from the chanting of the mantra, we're invoking an energy that is from the non-temporal world. And this is the theory behind mantra. Mantra actually means literally, man means mind, and tra means to lift or to deliver. So the mind can be delivered by the power of the mantra. The mantra itself comes in the form of names, and these are names of avatars. An avatar means literally in Sanskrit, one who descends from a higher level to a lower level, and then that opens for us a connection to the non-temporal realm. And we are part of that higher world, but this is the way that we can become directly connected to it. So there are various mantras, and we can try them out in the next couple of minutes. This is the avatar Nitai and Gauranga, and the mantra is Nitai Gauranga. And I will say it a few times. And if you like, you can follow behind closed mics. I recommend that you vibrate it and then see how it feels. Nitai Gauranga. Nitai Gauranga. Nitai Gauranga. Nitai Gauranga. Nitai Gauranga. And the next mantra is the Maha Mantra, and it has an attractive feature to it. Krush in Sanskrit means the attractor. So the name Krish means reality is the most beautiful. And the only reason I ultimately suffer is because I'm not seeing reality. So this mantra is meant to reveal to us the beauty of reality. And we experience the beauty of reality, it pulls us away from everything else inferior. And so if you hear the mantra and you feel the quality of it when you do your mantra meditation, your mind will become purified, naturally lifted to sattva and above. So this one, I'm going to use a tune, and I'll sing it once, and then on the refrain or the second time I come into it, then just listen to it the first time and then sing along on the second time. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Now everyone. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And the form that I did that mantra meditation in just then is called kirtan. So the first one was japa, where you just say it to yourself. So if you rise in the morning and you practice these mantras by repeating them and just listening to the sound vibration and bringing your mind back to it, then you'll notice the effect. And also you can sing it as well. And if you need any tunes to sing it to, I can provide them for you. That's one of them. And there are many others. Or you can simply say that second mantra as japa, also repeat it. Well, I've run us over the time, JM, but we had a lot to cover today. And we'll just, for everyone that's still on, let's just see if you have any last questions or a reflection or a comment that you want to make. Thank you, Jay. Thank you, Deepak. They're writing in. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It was really a helpful question you asked. I deeply appreciate it. Good to have you.
There is one question on how to get the 21-day challenge.
Yes.
So we had the July 21-day challenge on this month. So we'll be starting the August one midnight tonight. And what I'll also do is post the link as well as recording as part of the meeting invite so that you can get it. And you can visit vaisheshikadas.com. And on the website, you can see the 21-day challenge as well.
I highly recommend it. It's a very the word challenge, can sound like, hey, come on, I got enough challenges in my life. But it's very, very gentle and easy. But it's something. It's not nothing. You'll notice it. And if you try it out, just go investigate it and sign up for it. You don't have to do all of the elements that are in it. But if you do any of them, you're going to notice a difference. I promise you. I guarantee it. It's very, very powerful. Okay. Did you put the link for them? You just went on mute, JM.
Thank you. It was my turn, I guess. So I just pasted the link on the chat box as well. So you can look at the link. And for everyone, I'll send out as a email response as well.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you very much, everybody. Keep in mind, where attention goes, energy flows. Your attention is your main asset, and where you place it will direct you in your life. Thank you very, very much. It's been a real pleasure, and I'll look forward to seeing you next week. Thanks, JM, and thanks, Avantika.
Thank you.
Have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you.